Hi there, my name's Nick Francis. I'm the Chief Technology and Marketing Officer for Brooklyn Vendor Assurance, and today I'm going to take you through 4 things to consider when creating a commercial or supplier management office. You might have heard it referred to as a vendor management office as well. So, what do you need to consider in your operating construct, and what will be evolved in order to establish a commercial, so customer, or supplier management office? First things first, the mission. So, customer supplier management office will be made up of existing managers or account managers or customer managers or supplier managers that are in the space, and associated team members like coordinators that are aligned to those entities, and they're dedicated to manage customer and suppliers, the contracts that are underpinning those customer and supplier relationships, and also the associated products and services that fit within that. Also, in the context of post-award. So what that means is once the contract or the deal is signed, looking after that for the duration of the life cycle. The aims will to be drive and adapt and continuously improve the best practice and the policies and the processes that wrap around the customer and supplier relationship in this sense. The group will be focused on capturing business value, and whilst ensuring what was committed in the contract is delivered, making sure that benefit and that business value is being realised, and also reducing any risk of the third-party engagement. So the deal team that's together, which is like a matrix managed multi-party team, making sure that there's nothing that's going to risk the delivery of what's in the contract as required by the agreement. Underpinning that is a set of clear responsibilities. So the group's to manage the strategic or selected set of customers or suppliers in this case. They are designed and there to create and maintain, as I said, a core set of processes and then associated governance structures of those processes to make sure that they're operating in an efficient and effective manner and that they're fit for purpose for the organisation. They're also there to advise and guide other customer and supplier management roles. So anyone that's involved with a deal, be that on the buyer side or the supplier side, making sure that those roles are understood and what's expected of them and where they can go for further information or resources or tooling, etc. Ensure alignment and continuous improvement by taking input from the specialists and the architects and the domain experts that there are within the function and wrapped into the deal construct, and ensuring that they are delivering as expected as part of that contractual arrangement. But also, last but no means least, they're there to drive up compliance levels to make sure that the deal, be it compliance on the customer, so the supplier side, or the buying organisation side, the supplier side, that they're effective in a control environment sense. So all the controls, be it financial, be it information security, be it data, remain healthy and optimised throughout that life cycle of that deal, which thus is going to reduce the risk of anything potentially untoward happening. We need a team structure, or team structure needs to be considered to help with that delivery of the responsibilities. So responsibilities and process don't need to get delivered on their own. There needs to be an account broken down to kind of like a RACI level. RACI matrix is a responsible, accountable, consulting and informed matrix. It's a good way of working out who's going to do what within a team and where those governing bodies report into. So in this case, you've got on the left, you've got governing bodies like procurement functions, commercial functions, compliance and legal, risk, and the executive group that will feed in and represented as governing bodies that help set policy, etc., into what is effectively a commercial or supply management office director. Within that group, there needs to be a manager type, right? A lead, a designer or an architect, as you were, that's going to look at evolving and maintaining and building those processes on an ongoing basis and reviewing and refining them as new processes and new requirements come on, either through business change or the regulators of potentially that industry asking for new things to be done in conjunction with suppliers and customers that are managed against a deal context or in a contractual context. They're also going to be responsible for looking at what the internal tools are that underpin those processes, that help scale that out, help digitize the process, make sure there's the relevant data repositories to be operating at scale. A lot of these functions in large companies nowadays, they need to have a tool set or a digital tool set to help scale the operation, at least cover off all the bases that are required from a compliance level, policy or regulation standpoint. You then have the individual customer and supplier managers that are part of that group, and they break off and are like a hybrid operating model that's the centre of excellence, and then they break off and deploy into the company subsidiaries and the internal service owners to help them understand the context of what effective deal management looks like to make sure that the outcomes of the contract are delivered, as I said earlier. So quick statement on that. So the organisation will start small, execute at a growing pace in line with onboarding priorities. So most important customers, biggest deals first kind of thing. And they will establish themselves and look at by segment or by category in some sort of semblance of what's critical to less critical, because it's highly likely that you're not going to get across every single contract you've got or every single deal in the organisation you've got. So there needs to be a way of prioritising them. You need to look at it by role. So in terms of what roles are involved within this management of this deal and how they need to work together. Again, as I said, critical processes are being reviewed around the life cycle. And then from the centre, all of this is driven out to the business units and the subsidiaries. And ultimately, that's the team structure and the process structure that's going to create this commercial or supplier management office. In terms of implementation, what can one expect from this? Well, I'd say you'd need to look at giving it an implementation period to stand this up at least sort of 8 to 12 weeks, if not longer than that. Depends what your history's like, executing against new operating models and changing the size and shape of your organisation. But focus on these groups is my suggestion. So initially land, make sure you maintain or establish some kind of visibility and baseline. So how many customers or suppliers are there? What is that baseline number of spend under management? So all those relationships, all those deals added up, what's the total cost? How do you segment them into priority? How do you wrap around a strategic design on that in terms of what the team's focus is going to be to start with based on the size and scale of the resources you've got available? How are you going to communicate out the governance? What are the governance structures going to be for this organisation? Thinking like in quarterly, monthly, weekly, and even maybe daily meetings, etc. that take place. Establish that basic organisation, like that's shown in point 3 above. Document your core processes at a minimum. So what are the core processes that the function will operate off of, and define the tools landscape required to manage against that. So that's your kind of land phase. It might be a number of weeks in length before you then look at the expand phase. So deploy the customer or the commercial, should I say, or supplier management office platform. What's the tool of choice that's going to be deployed out to help that organisation scale and grow and capture all the necessary points and run all the processes? Establish within that tool set the control environment. So what controls are you going to deploy to what deal and why? How to define what deal gets what controls is a separate piece of work all in itself, based on typically potentially inherent risk. So what's the risk of the deal that you're looking at? And there's going to be more information coming on inherent risk and why you might want to measure that. Looking to increase compliance. So how do you then measure compliance of a deal? What are the control environments? If all those are met, how do you know that they're met? And then how you then make sure compliance is driven up within a deal construct. Make sure the risks are effectively managed and captured. So initially captured as part of the start of the deal, back to that inherent risk point. So what are the risks of doing this activity with the customer or supplier? How are you managing those risks? How do you then hold your customer or your supplier to account, essentially? So basically holding them to the terms of the deal, making sure that what's being delivered is in the spirit of what was signed up to at the begin with. Then once they expand, you look to evolve. So evolving in terms of taking cost out or bad cost, taking that out, capturing more value, so increasing the value of the deal, looking at how you consolidate services into this, how you can make it more efficient, faster, quicker, better, and then how as a group that you can come together and use the brain power of the multiple organisations that are in place to then do some joint innovation. So over the period for implementation that you do those 3 stages well, what you can expect in terms of business outcomes and goals is you're going to get improved in performance of your deals. You're going to reduce the overall cost of either managing that deal or the value of the deal itself. You're going to add more hidden value. So look at leveraging the multi-party team where possible to make sure you've got some added value coming out of there, be that just from a knowledge perspective or extra scope you can deliver with the same. Looking at reducing risk because you're going to better manage your controls. The risks are going to be managed better. Thus, by managing the risk better, you're going to increase your compliance and make compliance better. And ultimately, the better to be good at this, you're going to shorten your time to market. You're going to go quicker at getting these deals stood up and delivered in a consistent, constructive manner that is well understood by your organisation. So everyone becomes more familiar with it. It means you'll go quicker, basically. It's like a blueprint for success. And by the nature of what you're doing, you will increase collaboration. And ultimately, the increased collaboration is going to lead you to increased revenue at some point. Hopefully, that was useful. That is, like I said, some of you will know it as a vendor management office. It can also be called a supplier management office. But on the other side of the fence, if you're working from a customer perspective, it's a commercial management office, basically there to ensure the success of the deal for the very important deals of an organisation. And this is one way you can deploy that in a sort of a hybrid operating model perspective, where you've got a centre of excellence and then they help educate the rest of the organisation and make sure the deals are running in a compliant yet performant manner. Thanks again. Speak soon. Bye-bye.
To keep up with the latest Brooklyn vendor assurance news, subscribe here and follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Links in the description below.